Captain Arya Thorne sat in the gleaming conference room aboard the human flagship Endurance, her heart racing despite her calm demeanor. The walls of the room were lined with holographic displays showing maps of the galaxy, trade routes, and potential alliance territories. The space was designed for peace talks, but the atmosphere felt heavy, almost suffocating. Today was the day she would meet the Velthari, an alien species that humanity had only just discovered. They were advanced, intelligent, and mysterious, and the galaxy had watched them from afar for centuries. Arya, who had spent her life training in diplomacy, had never been more prepared for a mission. But even with all the training and knowledge, nothing could fully prepare her for this moment. The Velthari were not just any alien species. They were rumored to be the most powerful in the galaxy, their technology far beyond anything humans had developed. She looked across the room at the other members of her team. They were all as tense as she was. Each person knew the weight of this meeting. This could be the beginning of a new chapter for humanity, or it could lead to disaster. They were walking into the unknown, ready to either make an alliance with the Velthari or face the consequences of rejection. The stakes were high. The door opened with a soft hiss, and the air seemed to grow even colder. The Velthari had arrived. Arya stood, her posture straight, as she faced the new arrivals. She tried to steady her breathing. There was something about the way they moved, the way they carried themselves. It was unnerving. The Velthari were tall, their figures sleek and graceful, their faces elegant, but there was a hardness in their eyes, an intensity that felt like they could see right through her. The leader of the Velthari delegation stepped forward, her steps deliberate and measured. She was taller than Arya by at least a foot, her long silver hair flowing behind her like liquid light. Her skin shimmered, a subtle blend of pale blue and silver, almost as if she were made of stardust itself. She radiated power, and yet there was an eerie calmness in her presence. The air felt electric when she entered the room, as if the universe itself held its breath. This was Ambassador Selene, the one who would speak for her people. Selene's eyes locked with Arya's, and for a brief moment, the world seemed to disappear around them. Arya's mind raced. She had read about the Velthari, but there was no preparation that could have braced her for the intensity of their gaze. It was as though Selene could see straight into her soul. She felt a strange wave of discomfort rise in her chest, but she masked it quickly, focusing on the task at hand.
"Welcome, Ambassador Selene," Arya said, her voice steady despite the rush of emotions she was feeling. "It is an honor to finally meet you in person." Selene tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable.
"The honor is ours, Captain Thorne," she replied, her voice smooth and melodic, yet carrying an undertone of something deeper, something that Arya couldn't quite place. "We have waited a long time for this moment." Arya nodded, taking a deep breath.
"As have we. I trust this will be the beginning of a long and prosperous relationship between our peoples."
The tension in the room thickened, and Arya realized that the conversation had barely begun, but already the Velthari were setting the tone. Serious, almost detached. She had to keep her focus. "We have studied your species for quite some time," Selene continued, her eyes never leaving Arya's. "We have watched your progress, your resilience. You are an interesting species, Captain, but there is something about you that I believe you do not yet understand." Arya's brow furrowed slightly. What did she mean by that? She had read every report, every piece of data on the Velthari, but none of it had prepared her for the way Selene spoke. There was something cryptic in her words, something unsettling that made Arya's stomach tighten. "I'm not sure I understand," Arya replied cautiously. "What do you mean?" Selene's lips curled into the faintest of smiles, but it was not a comforting one. It was cold, calculated.
"You'll hate me when you know?"
she said, her voice almost a whisper, as though she were speaking a secret only meant for Arya's ears. The words hung in the air like a dark cloud.
Arya's mind raced, trying to decipher the meaning behind Seleni's cryptic statement. She felt a chill sweep through her, but she quickly pushed it aside. This was a diplomatic mission. She couldn't let herself be shaken by a remark, no matter how unsettling it was. "Ambassador Selene," Arya began, trying to regain control of the conversation. "We are here to build a lasting peace, to open the door for mutual growth between our species. We have much to offer each other." Selene's smile faded, and her gaze grew even colder. "Peace," she said softly, almost as if tasting the word. "You believe that, don't you? You think that we are here for peace?" "That we want to help you elevate your species." Arya stood her ground, not allowing her discomfort to show. "That's why we're here. We believe in cooperation. We believe in finding common ground." Selene's eyes narrowed. "But what if I told you that your species has been manipulated? That your so-called progress was never truly yours? That we, the Velthari, have watched you, guided you, and yet we have kept you in the dark, Captain. You are not as free as you think." Arya blinked, the weight of Selene's words sinking in. There was something wrong here, something she wasn't understanding. What was she talking about? Humanity had built its own society, its own technology, had fought its own battles. How could the Velthari have been involved in any of it? Selene stepped closer, her presence dominating the space. "You will understand soon enough," she said, her voice low and full of meaning. "But not yet. For now, we wait. You will learn the truth, and when you do, you'll hate me." Arya was speechless. The room seemed to close in on her, and she fought to keep her composure. She had come here to forge an alliance, but now she was faced with a question that loomed over everything. What was the truth that Selene spoke of? And why did it feel like a threat, even though it was wrapped in such calm, measured words? "Thank you for your honesty, Ambassador," Arya managed to say, her voice steady but her mind racing. "But I assure you, humanity will find its place in this galaxy. We don't need to be guided." Selene's eyes flickered, and for a moment there was a flash of something that almost seemed like pity.
"You misunderstand, Captain," she said, her voice almost soft.
"We are not your enemy, but you will come to understand that your place in the galaxy is not what you think it is, and when you do, you will hate me for it." The words echoed in Arya's mind long after the meeting ended. As the Velthari delegation departed, leaving her alone in the room with her team, Arya couldn't shake the feeling that she had just crossed a line. The Velthari were not what they seemed, and the truth, whatever it was, had yet to reveal itself. The next few days would be critical. Arya needed to dig deeper, to uncover the truth behind Selene's cryptic words. But one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. Captain Arya Thorne couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that lingered after her meeting with Ambassador Selene. Her words echoed in Arya's mind, replaying over and over again. "You'll hate me when you know."
A cryptic remark gnawed at her, raising more questions than answers. What was Selene trying to warn her about?
What did she mean by humanity not being as free as they thought? Arya was no stranger to alien politics, but this was different. The Velthari weren't like other species. Their intelligence, their power, it was all so overwhelming. But why the secrecy? Why the coldness? As days passed, Arya found herself growing increasingly frustrated. She had come here to build an alliance, to secure humanity's future among the stars. But now she wasn't sure if the Velthari were allies or enemies. They had claimed to want peace, but Selene's words suggested something far darker. If they truly wanted peace, why had they kept humanity in the dark for so long? Why had they let humans believe they were alone in the galaxy, when clearly they were not? Arya's thoughts were interrupted when she was summoned to the command deck. As she stepped onto the bridge of the Endurance, her first officer, Lieutenant Jalen Morrow, met her with a concerned look. "Captain, we've been monitoring Velthari communications. Something's off. We've detected unusual energy readings from a nearby Velthari outpost." Arya's heart skipped a beat. She knew that the Velthari were a technologically advanced species, but this was the first time she had heard of anything unusual in their operations. "What kind of readings?" she asked, trying to mask the unease creeping into her voice. "It's hard to say, ma'am," Jalen replied.
It's not a typical energy signature. It's almost like
They're hiding something. And the readings don't match anything we've seen in their previous transmissions.
Arya's mind raced.
Could this be connected to Seleni's cryptic warning? Was it possible that the Velthari were hiding something from humanity? She didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the pieces were starting to form a picture, and it wasn't one she liked. "I want a full analysis of those readings, Lieutenant," Arya said firmly. "Let's find out exactly what they're up to." Jalen nodded and immediately set to work. Arya turned away from him, her mind already spiraling into the worst-case scenario. She had always trusted her instincts, and right now, her instincts were telling her that there was something dangerous about the Velthari, a hidden truth that they weren't willing to share. She needed answers, and she needed them fast. Hours passed in tense silence as the crew of the Endurance worked tirelessly to decode the Velthari transmissions. Arya paced back and forth, her mind never leaving the troubling thoughts that had consumed her since her meeting with Selene. She had hoped that the Velthari were simply being cautious, that their behavior was nothing more than a result of their own mysterious nature. But now, with the strange energy readings and the secrecy surrounding their operations, Arya feared that something much more sinister was at play. Finally, Jalen spoke up, breaking the silence. "Captain, we've decoded the signal. It's a set of coordinates hidden within layers of encryption. We believe it's a location of some kind."
Arya's heart raced. This was it, the clue she had been waiting for.
"Set a course for the coordinates," she said, her voice sharp with determination. "Let's find out what the Velthari are hiding."
The Endurance shot through space at maximum speed, heading toward the mysterious location.
As the ship neared the coordinates, the tension among the crew became palpable. Everyone knew that this could be the key to unlocking the truth about the Velthari, but no one knew what they would find when they arrived. When they finally reached the location, Arya ordered the ship to drop out of warp. The surrounding space was eerily quiet, the stars stretching out before them in an infinite sea of darkness. In the distance, a small, uncharted moon loomed, its surface covered in what appeared to be ancient ruins. The energy readings had led them here, and the moon was the source. Arya stood at the command center, staring out at the moon. Her heart pounded in her chest. She had never felt more uncertain. What was this place? What had the Velthari been hiding here, and why had they gone to such lengths to keep it secret? "Lieutenant Morrow, prepare a team to investigate the surface," Arya ordered.
I'll join you. Let's see what the Velthari don't want us to know.
The team descended to the surface of the moon, their boots crunching against the rocky ground. The air was thin and cold, the ruins of an ancient structure towering in the distance. As they approached, Arya could see strange symbols etched into the stone, markings that resembled nothing she had ever seen before. It was clear that this place was old, far older than anything humanity had encountered. But what did it mean? The team entered the ruins, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. Arya's breath echoed in the silent corridors as they moved deeper into the structure. The walls were covered in faded carvings and strange inscriptions, but there was something about them that felt familiar. The symbols seemed to be telling a story, but one that was just beyond her reach. And then, in the heart of the ruins, they found it. A chamber, unlike anything Arya had ever imagined. At the center of the chamber stood a large metallic device, covered in strange alien symbols. The device hummed with power, and Arya could feel the energy radiating from it, a pulsing force that seemed to vibrate through her very bones.
What is this?
One of the crew members whispered, his voice filled with awe. Arya stepped forward, her hand reaching out to touch the device. As her fingers brushed against it, the room seemed to come alive. A series of lights blinked on the device, and the strange symbols began to glow with an otherworldly light. A voice, cold and distant, filled the room. It was a language Arya didn't understand, but the words sent a chill down her spine. She could feel the power of the device, the ancient energy that pulsed through it. It was a weapon, but not one like anything humanity had ever seen. The voice stopped, and the lights flickered out. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. And then, a voice spoke in perfect English, the words chilling in their clarity. "It is time for you to understand," the voice said. "You have been chosen, Captain Thorn, to witness the truth."
The Velthari have kept you in the dark for a reason, but no longer.
Arya's heart skipped a beat. The voice, it was coming from the device. And the words were clear. The truth was about to be revealed.
What truth? Arya whispered, her voice barely audible.
The voice spoke again, this time slower, as though it were savoring each word. Humanity was never meant to rise. You were never meant to be free. Your kind has always been manipulated, controlled, and the Velthari are the architects of your downfall. Arya's blood ran cold. She stumbled back, her mind reeling. What was the voice saying? What did it mean? The Velthari had been manipulating humanity. But why? What could they possibly want from them? The voice continued. "The Velthari have watched your species grow, only to suppress you when you became a threat.
They feared your potential. They feared what you could become.
And so they kept you in the shadows, hidden from the truth. But now you know."
You are not free, Captain Thorn. You never were.
Arya's mind spun. She had come here seeking answers. But now she was faced with a terrifying truth. The Velthari, the very species she had come to trust, had been deceiving humanity all along. The alliance she had hoped to build, the peaceful future she had dreamed of. It had all been a lie. Her heart pounded in her chest as the weight of the revelation sank in. She had to make a choice, return to Earth with this knowledge, or confront the Velthari and demand the truth. Either way, she knew one thing for sure. Humanity's future would never be the same again. Captain Arya Thorn stood frozen in the dark chamber, the voice of the ancient device still echoing in her mind. The words it had spoken were clear. Humanity had been manipulated, hidden away, kept in the dark by the Velthari.
Arya couldn't process the depth of what she had just learned.
Everything she had believed about the Velthari, their supposed nobility, their supposed desire for peace, had been a lie. It was a betrayal of unimaginable scale. For a moment, Arya could only stare at the strange device before her. Its humming energy filled the room, almost as if it were alive, waiting for her to act. The crew behind her was silent, each of them equally stunned by the revelation. No one spoke. No one moved. The weight of the truth hung in the air like a heavy shroud, suffocating any thoughts of diplomacy or peace. "Captain," Jalen Morrow's voice was hesitant, but his words cut through the silence. "What do we do now?" Arya turned to face him, her face pale, her mind still reeling. "I don't know," she whispered. "I thought we were forging an alliance with the Velthari, that we were building something new. But now," her voice faltered, how could she go back to Earth, to humanity, and tell them what she had learned? How could she explain that everything, their history, their progress, their very existence, had been controlled, watched, and kept in the shadows by the very beings they had trusted? The truth felt like a heavy burden. one that threatened to crush everything she had worked for. But Arya was not one to back down in the face of adversity. If there was one thing humanity had proven time and time again, it was their resilience. They had fought through wars, faced extinction, and emerged stronger each time. She would not let the Velthari do this to them. She would not let them control their destiny.
"We need to get back to the ship," Arya said, her voice firm. "We need to report this to command."
The Velthari need to know that we know. The team nodded in agreement, and together they left the ruins, their minds buzzing with the shocking truth they had just uncovered. As they made their way back to the Endurance, Arya's thoughts were consumed with one thing: how to confront the Velthari. She had come here to build a future for humanity, but now she was faced with a terrible choice. How could she trust the Velthari again? Could she even negotiate with them after learning what they had done? When the team returned to the ship, Arya immediately ordered the crew to prepare for departure. They had to get back to Earth as soon as possible. But as the ship powered up and prepared to leave the moon's orbit, Arya couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. It was as though the Velthari knew they had uncovered their secret. "Lieutenant Morrow, keep an eye on our sensors," Arya said, her voice low but urgent. "I have a feeling the Velthari will not let this go." As the Endurance lifted off and made its way back into the vastness of space, Arya couldn't help but wonder. What would the Velthari do now? Would they come after them? Would they try to silence them? The threat of retaliation hung in the air like a dark cloud. Arya couldn't be sure of their next move, but she knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. Back in the command center, Arya sat in front of the holographic display, her hands gripping the edge of the table as she stared at the galaxy map before her. The Velthari had played a dangerous game, and now humanity had to decide how to respond. The information they had gathered on the moon was damning, but could they convince the rest of humanity to act on it? Could they rally the support they needed to stand against the Velthari? "Captain!" Jalen's voice broke through her thoughts.
"We're picking up a distress signal from Earth. It's coming from one of the outer colonies."
Arya's heart skipped a beat. What's the source of the signal? It's a military vessel. "They're requesting immediate assistance," Jalen said, his voice tense. "They've encountered a Velthari fleet."
Arya's stomach dropped. The Velthari, had they already begun their retaliation? Was this the beginning of an all-out war?
"Set a course for the colony," Arya ordered, her voice resolute. "Prepare the ship for combat."
"We don't know what we're walking into." As the Endurance changed course, Arya's thoughts raced. She had expected the Velthari to respond in some way, but not like this. It was clear that their manipulation of humanity was not just about controlling their future, it was about keeping them in check. If the Velthari had gone so far as to attack a human colony, then there was no going back. The truth was out, and the Velthari were not going to let humanity expose their secrets without a fight. The Endurance entered the outer system of the colony and immediately detected signs of a large-scale battle. Velthari ships, sleek and imposing, were engaging with human military vessels in a deadly standoff. The human fleet was outmatched, but they were holding their ground. Arya could see the desperation in their movements. Their fight was one of survival, not conquest. "Captain, we've been detected," Jalen said, his voice tight. "The Velthari are locking onto us."
"Activate shields," Arya ordered, her eyes narrowing as she watched the battle unfold on the holographic display.
"We're not backing down." The Endurance moved into position, its weapon systems powering up. As the ship prepared to engage, Arya's mind was consumed with the harsh reality of the situation. This wasn't just a diplomatic mission anymore. It was a fight for humanity's survival. The Velthari had made their move, and now humanity had to respond in kind. "Arya," Jalen said, his voice softer now, "we're not going to be able to hold them off for long. The Velthari are too powerful." Arya didn't answer immediately. She couldn't. There was nothing she could say that would change the fact that the odds were stacked against them. But she wasn't going to let humanity go down without a fight. Not after everything they had learned. Not after the truth had come to light. "I know," she said finally, her voice steady despite the fear that was building in her chest.
But we fight. We don't give up.
Humanity has survived worse, and we will survive this. The Endurance powered forward, engaging the Velthari fleet. The battle was fierce, with human and alien ships exchanging fire, the air crackling with energy. The Endurance held its ground, but Arya knew they couldn't win this fight alone. They needed more than just courage. They needed unity. They needed to show the Velthari that humanity would not back down. "We're broadcasting the truth," Arya said, her fingers flying over the control panel. "Let the galaxy know what the Velthari have done." Jalen nodded, and within moments the Endurance broadcast the message to every ship, every colony, every human settlement in the galaxy. The truth was out. The Velthari's manipulation was exposed. Their betrayal laid bare for all to see. As the message went out, Arya could feel the weight of it. The galaxy would never be the same again. The Velthari might be the most powerful species in the universe, but humanity had something they could never take away. The truth, the strength of their will, and their unyielding desire to survive.
"We'll fight for our place," Arya muttered to herself as the battle raged on.
"And we'll make them see what happens when you underestimate humanity." The battle raged around Captain Arya Thorne and her crew. The Endurance was surrounded by Velthari ships, sleek and formidable, their advanced technology making it clear that they were not a force to be taken lightly. The human fleet fought valiantly, but they were outmatched in firepower, speed, and sheer technological might. Yet in the midst of the chaos, something remarkable was happening. Humanity was showing a strength that even the Velthari had not anticipated. Arya's hands gripped the armrests of her chair, her eyes scanning the holographic battlefield before her. The Endurance moved with precision, dodging incoming fire and retaliating with calculated strikes. Every move was a testament to the strength and resilience of humanity. They were fighting not just for survival, but for their right to exist, for the truth they had uncovered. "Captain!" Jalen Morrow's voice cut through her thoughts. "The Velthari are starting to form a new strategy. They're focusing all their fire on the human vessels. They want to end this quickly." Arya's heart pounded in her chest. The Velthari were always 3 steps ahead, calculating and ruthless. She knew they wouldn't stop until humanity was crushed, but she wasn't going to let that happen. Not today. "We can't let them win," Arya said, her voice steady but filled with resolve. "Send a message to the human fleet.
We need to rally together. Now's our chance to show them that they underestimated us."
Jalen nodded, quickly transmitting the order to the rest of the human ships. Within moments, the message went out across the fleet. It was a simple, direct message. We stand together. We fight for our future. The human ships, battered but unbroken, responded. One by one, they aligned their formations, focusing their fire on the Velthari ships with newfound coordination. It was a sight to behold. Humanity, despite being outgunned, was proving to the Velthari that they were not so easily defeated. Arya's eyes narrowed as she watched the battle unfold. The Velthari had underestimated humanity. They had thought that their superior technology and centuries of manipulation would ensure their dominance. But humanity had something the Velthari could never have predicted: a relentless will to survive. The tide of the battle began to shift. Slowly, the Velthari ships started to retreat, their formations faltering as the human fleet closed in on them. Arya's heart surged with hope, but she knew that this was only the beginning. The Velthari were powerful, and their fleet was vast. They would not back down easily. As the Endurance moved forward, Arya's mind raced. The truth had been revealed to the galaxy. Humanity's place in the universe was no longer a secret. The Velthari had tried to control them, to keep them in the shadows, but humanity had refused to stay hidden. They had fought for their right to be seen, to be heard, and now the universe was watching. The Velthari fleet was not retreating in defeat. They were regrouping, preparing for another strike. Arya could feel the tension in the air, the weight of the moment bearing down on her. The Velthari would not let this go. If anything, they would escalate the conflict, bringing everything they had to bear against humanity. "Captain," Jalen said, his voice tense, "the Velthari are deploying reinforcements. Their flagship is heading toward us. It's larger than anything we've seen so far." Arya's pulse quickened. The Velthari flagship was legendary, a massive vessel that was said to be able to crush entire fleets with ease. It was a symbol of their power, and if it reached the human fleet, it could mean the end of their struggle. "We can't let them get close," Arya said, her voice filled with determination. "Prepare the Endurance for a direct assault." "We're going to take down their flagship." The crew moved quickly, each person following their orders with precision. The Endurance powered up its weapons, the hum of its engines vibrating through the ship. Arya knew this would be the most dangerous moment of the battle. The Velthari flagship was formidable, but it was also vulnerable. If humanity could take it down, they would deal a devastating blow to the Velthari's plans. As the Velthari flagship loomed closer, Arya's grip tightened on the controls. The ship swerved to avoid a barrage of fire, returning with its own strike. The Velthari flagship responded with devastating force, its weapons tearing through the Endurance's shields. The ship shook violently, but Arya didn't flinch. She held firm, keeping her eyes locked on the target. "Captain, we've got incoming!" Jalen shouted. "The flagship's main cannon is charging!" Arya's mind raced. They had moments before the Velthari flagship fired its most powerful weapon. If they didn't act fast, it would be the end. "Target their weapon systems," Arya commanded. "Take out their main cannon." The Endurance fired a series of precise shots, aiming for the Velthari flagship's weapon systems. The flagship's shields flared as the blast struck home, but Arya could see the damage. The flagship's cannon faltered, the power reserves draining as the human ships continued their relentless assault. But it wasn't enough. The Velthari flagship fired its main cannon, sending a massive energy beam straight toward the Endurance. The ship rocked as the beam struck, sending waves of heat and energy through the hull. Arya's eyes widened in horror as the shields flickered, struggling to hold. "Captain, the shields are failing!" Jalen shouted. "We need to retreat!" But Arya refused to back down. She could see the humanity's fleet, small but determined, fighting back, pushing the Velthari to the brink of retreat. They couldn't lose now, not after everything they had fought for. "No," Arya said, her voice steady. "We fight until the end."
We've come too far to turn back. The Endurance fired again, this time targeting the Velthari flagship's engines.
The shots found their mark, and the flagship's engines exploded in a burst of light. The flagship faltered, its once mighty presence now crippled. The human fleet closed in, finishing what the Endurance had started. As the flagship finally fell silent, Arya allowed herself a moment of relief. The Velthari were retreating. Their fleet had been shattered, their flagship destroyed. It wasn't a victory, not yet, but it was a sign. Humanity had proven that they were not to be underestimated. The universe was watching, and the Velthari had learned a valuable lesson. Humanity was not a species to be controlled or manipulated. They would fight for their place in the galaxy, no matter the odds. Arya stood tall, her heart still racing, as the Endurance slowly turned away from the battlefield. The fight was far from over, but this battle, this moment, belonged to humanity. They had made their stand, and they had won. "We did it," Jalen said, his voice filled with awe. "We actually did it." Arya looked out the window, watching the Velthari fleet retreat into the darkness of space. She knew the battle was not over. The Velthari would regroup, and they would come. But humanity had proven something today. They had shown that no matter how powerful the enemy, no matter how insurmountable the odds, humanity would never stop fighting for their future.
This is just the beginning, Arya said softly. We fought for our place in the galaxy, and now we'll make sure everyone knows it.
We will not be controlled. We will not be silenced. We are humanity, and we will stand tall. As the Endurance sailed toward Earth, Arya felt a sense of hope rising within her. The truth had been revealed. Humanity was no longer in the shadows, and together they would face whatever came next. The Velthari may have underestimated them, but humanity had shown them the strength of their spirit. The galaxy would never forget.